This week's episode of the 24th Man, we have Bristol Bears fullback, Bedford Blues legend, and all-round top bloke, Rich Lane. Rich, how are we?
Hey lads, how we doing?
Thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure to see your boys' faces.
Well, it's a down week for you, isn't it? So no LV.
Yeah, down week, mate. Yeah, one of them.
Down.
Been in three
Down, but
times
you're in at the
already.
club. Yeah, you're in at the club every single day, one of those down weeks.
Just no
Yeah.
meetings, but we're in. It's been
Mate,
good.
good. Mate, we normally go back to the start with each guest, where it all began and their journey to where they are now. So take us back to, where you grew up, where you were born and all those sorts of stuff.
So born in the mighty Bedford, about 30 yards from the ground. Started when I first started rugby, I think I was 6. Like basically everyone at my school started at Junior Blues because that's the year. I think that's pretty. Everyone starts then, don't they? Sort of 6 years old, roughly. Went down, chucked my kit on with my dad, a few bacon rolls, whatnot, minis, rugby. Did that all the way up till I was 12. And then went off to Millfield to school, so I had to move away. Got involved with Bath through sort of John Mallet and that route from school. Obviously used to play there. So signed for them straight out of school, did 4 years sort of holding bags and going out and having nights out and stuff like that. Not really playing. And then went to Jersey for 2 years and then signed for Bedford, which is where we met properly and fell in love, obviously. 5 years there, and then Bristol present, I guess you'd say.
So going back to obviously going to Millfield, I don't know what it is like now in terms of how prestigious it was as a rugby school. Obviously, it still is. But did you mix it with any top players back then? Anyone decent in your team?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of sort of ridiculous names that have come out of there. So I think a couple of years above me was your likes of like your Maka Vanapolas, Jonathan Joseph, Reece Ruddock, those sorts of boys. And then I played the likes of Henry Thomas, Ben Mosses, Freddie Clark, who's at Gloucester, who's in my year. Trying to think who else was with me. And then obviously below me is, I think a year or two below me was like sort of Tom Whiteley, Callum Sheedy, all those boys. So Adam Hastings. They've got a pretty good record of bringing lads through. And then me just hobbling along as well, tagging on to
I was going to say big names and then Rich Lane.
Yeah. Just like a few levels below that.
So obviously you finished your time there at Millfield and then you went full time with Bath. Talk us through your first experience of going full time and how it basically went. Because obviously as academy kids we have expectations of what full time rugby is supposed to look like, and then you get there and you're like, this isn't what I signed up for. In a tongue in cheek sort of way, it's not the fast cars and the high wages.
It is awful.
So talk to me about that first year and going full time and how it was and how you adapted to it.
Yeah, so to be fair, I was quite lucky in my last year of school. They sort of run it. Were you at the Ace College?
I was at Hartbury's Ace College. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I guess like you'd be aware that they obviously sort of try and run it a bit like an academy as best you can. So Milford, we were like training early mornings after lessons, like doing loads. So sort of moving into actual workload was all right. My first year was the year they moved to Farley House. So we were still sort of at Lambridge, gymming at the uni. I think food was at the Rex. And then like the odd rugby session would be at Farley. So we're basically just racking up the miles, moving around. So the schedule was like gym, 2 hours, like travel, get up, something else, 2 hours, whatever. But yeah, I moved over to Bath, moved in with my mate from school, JJ Kilmartin, and we hadn't really, as well as not being at Farley, we weren't really training with the first team. Obviously now it's like you're straight in and you're part of the squad, I guess. That first year was sort of, we did a few sessions, but it was very much like you didn't have to earn it, but you'd sort of be called up if there were numbers down type thing. So that first year for me was a bit like freshers in a way. We sort of obviously had to gym loads and try and get a bit bigger and do the odd session, but we were so far away from realistically playing first team. Um, it was sort of just trying to learn, get stuck in. Obviously, a lot of older boys just sort of like, a bit rabbit in the headlights slightly. But yeah, luckily we had a great group in the academy, and we sort of quickly turned to extracurricular activities of nights out and you know getting through the weeks like that. So yeah, my overriding memory of sort of the first year is not a lot of rugby. We did a bit of A League, but I think we lost every game that year, which was class.
Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, London like getting back at 2 a.m. was brilliant. So yeah, it was basically just, I probably shouldn't say it as an athlete, but a lot of going out and a lot of a lot less rugby than you'd actually imagine.
Yeah. So obviously you adapted to the first year, got on with it, through Wednesday night students and all that sort of stuff. And then second year, did you fully integrate the first team?
Yeah, so we were fully over at Farley full time. We were in with the first team. I think it was at the end of my first year. It was Ian McGeechan, and then he left, and then Gary Gold came in, and sort of I don't know whether it's because we were a year older, but everything seemed to just go under the same sort of blanket really. And we were training every day, and there was slightly more chance of sort of progression into the first team. So yeah, it all became a lot more, I say serious, but it was like, right, you're sort of in your second year now. Yeah, I was up of contract. I was sort of like what is this? You sort of maybe lost the initial excitement of, oh my god, I'm living my dream type thing, and it's now like, okay, I've got to try and at least kick on somehow here.
And you made your debut for Bath. When was that?
That was when was I think that was right at the end of my first year. Yeah, it was. It was in the LV Cup.
Yeah.
Again, away at Exeter. I think I got like 15 minutes off the bench or something. That was when, because we had Brad Davis, Ian McGeechan with the two coaches. So yeah, right at the end of the first year, I was like, oh, this could be class. Here we go. And then off season, they left. I was like, oh, class, start again.
And you went on to make what 12 appearances for Bath overall with a hat trick against, was it a Russian team? Was it a Russian team?
Mogliano away, Italian, huge hat trick. Dropped the week after.
Yeah, brilliant. So Mike Ford was in charge when your final year was at Bath, is that right?
Yeah, he was there with Gary, but he was backs coach or assistants coach or something, and then he moved in. He took over, I think, a year and a half. He was head coach whilst I was there.
How was your relationship with him?
I mean, we don't speak now.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I saved his number, obviously. Yeah, it was tough. It was, it was a period when my last year there, we got to the final of the Prem and lost to Sarries, but it was sort of, we had like, your George Fords, Carl Eastmans, Sam Burgess was in there. So it was like about as sort of star-studded as it came. So yeah, it was just one of those years. I had a couple of niggles. I was getting absolutely no love. The boys were flying, which was class to watch and be around. But obviously, from a personal point of view, I was just getting absolutely sort of nowhere with my rugby career. And it became pretty clear sort of that year that if I wanted to actually play and not just hold a bag, then I'd have to sort of start looking elsewhere, as you do, to try and actually get some game time. Because I think by the fourth year, I was just sat there going like, this is crap. Do you know what I mean? It's not my dream. It's not what I signed up for. So yeah, I felt like I just had to get out of there. Whether that was, no doubt me probably not training to the best of my abilities, but also I think just mentally I was absolutely dust by that point. I just needed a change.
Rich, when you talk about the niggles that you had to handle in that last year with Bath, is that something that you think came about through overtraining, or something that was just like freak niggles?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, more like the freak side of things. Like I think we played the Navy in one of an A-League games, or Somerset or something. And I got tackled from behind and did my syndesmosis and fractured the ankle as well. So that took like best part of 5 or 6 months to really get right. And then it was just little things after that. So yeah, it was one of them, like you train, or you might train for a month, get a game, something happens, you're then rehabbing again, and just never like got going type thing. And to be honest, I think as bad as it is to say, it's probably where I was. I was like, oh, if this injury takes me a couple of weeks longer, then I'm actually probably in a happier place, just sort of doing my rehab and gym. So yeah, I think training wise was pretty good, to be honest. On the whole, it was a few freak things, and then maybe being younger, you do pick up little niggles here and there that you maybe don't know how to manage as well, or stuff like that. But yeah, for me, it was that main big injury that sort of set me off on a load of little ones, to be honest.
And then you kicked on to Jersey for a couple of years. How was that?
It was good fun, mate. It was obviously the island well. It's a small place. Summer's unbelievable. Winter's pretty bleak. I turned up and we had the mighty Steve Bowden, legend, just wanting to maul and kick leather off it. So I turned up as like a winger fullback. I don't think I touched the ball for about 6 months, but no, it was like a great group of blokes. Probably one of the loosest groups of blokes I've been involved in. Some absolute.
What sort of boys did you have in that crew?
So that first year was like James Freeman, Gary Graham, Spoons, Nick Haining, Pierce Phillips, Dave Markham, Joe Buckle, Christ, Jack Moats. Do you remember Moatsy?
Yeah, I remember Moatsy. Yeah,
Ollie Evans.
Tom Howe had a few beers whilst he was out there, didn't he?
Tommy Howe was over there on loan. Young, like 18-year-old. Christ, he saw the light.
Yeah.
And then I think we just all had a bit of cabin fever, and away trips were loose, and sort of nights out there were pretty loose. And it was one of those islands where you just got to sort of buy into trying to have a good time, because winter, you just sort of, I don't know, it feels quite claustrophobic. But yeah, I think that's some of the best socials I've had, and the loosest like consecutive weeks of just every weekend lads just getting it wrong, giving Harvey a right headache.
Honestly, giving Harvey a headache was the best thing that lads could have possibly done. That was the pleasure. It wasn't winning the games; it was making him lose his marbles.
Did you have what was it called? Like challenge, the red light challenge, we started calling it.
Was that where you were put on a green, amber, red based on, so you couldn't drink, you could have a couple, and then green, you could go bananas?
I think they changed that. My first year, it was literally like, if you have any sort of niggle, and like we're talking, I've got, I don't know, a little graze on my knee, but I've just played on a 4G. They were like red light, and it was, if you get caught out in town, it's 250 quid fine to either Harvey's utility bill, or like we didn't actually know where the money was going to go. So
not accounted for.
Yeah. So lads would just be like hiding niggles, because obviously if you say like, oh, got a sore shoulder, they'd be like, red light, that's your weekend ruined. So boys would either just pretend they were absolutely fine and come in Monday like, or it was like, right, you're on a red light, that's the challenge. You're going out anyway, we're all piling in, and if we see, we'll like work in pairs or small groups. If we see any of the physios, we'll just be out there, not get caught, evade, like dodging time.
Mate, what used to crack me up was, and this is, I can't say I've seen this firsthand, but I heard about the traffic light system. You'd all be told that you're not going out and piss. So obviously a couple of lads have gone, fuck that, we're going. And then they've just seen Bill Jean out on the piss on his own on the one-man mission after he's told the whole crew, you're not going out. So there's no consistency there at all, especially in a place like that.
I think he was just red lighting lads so that he can have the place to himself.
One-man yacht club.
Yeah.
Big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, those are the bloody days, you know.
And then what I would describe as the most fun I've ever had in my career. Then we moved on. You moved on to Bedford, and we both met at the same point. Talk to me about your memories of that year, because on the field it was incredible as well as off the field. So talk to me about your memories and the crew that we had, and it was pretty much part-time rugby, wasn't it? Part-time rugby, full-time piss.
Yeah, with a few grenade bars chucked in for good measure.
Yeah, the old double.
Yeah. That year it's sort of legendary, isn't it? We all still talk about it. I think it was just whatever Mike did that year, whatever wine he'd been drinking when he was doing recruitment, he absolutely nailed it, because he got like, I feel like we had the perfect mix of sort of like senior pros of like your Dickos, Czechs, Linda, Jared. Was Flanners there that first year? Or was that the year after?
No, year after.
And then it was like, and then a group of like washed up ex-Prem ACAD lads who just wanted to play. And it was like, oh my God, we're actually playing every week. We get a few fans down here. Our training's like pretty village, really, but like we're just having the best time doing it. It's like we're doing hands through the poles for 40 minutes, and we're beating Ealing on the weekend. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Mate, I remember once I think we got hammered on the weekend. We didn't lose many games that year, but we definitely lost one early on. And we'd come back to training on the Monday, and there was a big slip and slide that had been laid out, and it was running.
Pumped by Bristol.
Yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, we got pumped by Bristol at home, and then they've laid out this massive slip and slide, and you've got Heinzie in a pair of budgies and all the coaches down the side of the pitch, and then there's like water balloons, wet tennis balls, wet footballs, and I don't know what we were achieving through this, but we just had to run through this gauntlet of we just had to run through this gauntlet of water basically being lobbed at us from all directions, and we done it, and then we finished training, and that was it.
It was Ben, have you ever seen I'm a Celeb? Get me out of here.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically based on the cyclone at the end. You know, that challenge they do right at the end. So he called it the Bedford like hurricane or something. We'd lost 65, like 38 or something to Bristol. And we were like, oh, we're probably going to get abused here, because our D was like, touch. Literally, as Eddie said, we've turned out, it's that buckets everywhere, Swiss balls. And he was like, right, get in forwards. You've got to do hands down the middle. And if you drop it, you start again. And boys were like drop kicking Swiss balls at each other, like sponging. It was one of the best training I've ever had.
Do you reckon he almost just wanted to erase your minds from the weekend, and this was the way to do it?
Well, we used to have that joke, didn't we, Edgy, about how big the carpet was at the end of the season. So, like, if we lost, we wouldn't really review it. So we'd be like, oh, push that under the carpet. So at the end of the
year. Mate, what is so great about Bedford as a club, and I think something that everyone can stand by, is if you did lose, you left that at the door, pretty much. It was, the game was over and you moved on straight away, and you had a beer with your mates afterwards and you cracked on to the next week, because obviously in the champ they come thick and fast. There's not much time off. But stuff like that is, obviously, I wouldn't say it's professional, but it works in terms of parking it and being able to crack on. But yeah, the carpet was pretty big by the end of the year.
But when you say that, like, it wasn't necessarily professional. I think trying to, as you said, park it and move on is the sense of professionalism. Because if you keep that, you know, compounding throughout the training sessions, throughout the week, throughout the months, then you never really get over it and get on to the next thing.
Yeah. And I think they were great with that. Rich, do you remember, what do you remember about the trip to Bruges? What was your highlights of that?
Right. I think the thing that sticks in my mind the most was we met. Obviously, we got the bus to Dover, didn't we?
Yeah.
We're all in. I think we were in Bedford gear at this point, or something.
Oh, the spray tan.
Yeah, naturally. Yeah. I think we watched Dunkirk that week in the cinema, and Mike was like, "I love war. We're going Dunkirk." I think the story was there was I think there's a couple of guys that died over there that played for Bedford in the early days. So we were like, right, we'll pay our respects, we'll go see Dunkirk, it'll be pretty cool, bit of culture, and then we'll do a bit of team bonding sort of the next day or whatever. So got to Dover, Mike's like quite serious, front of the bus. The lads are pretty buzzing. Right, lads, we've got a serious thing tonight. No drinking till we get there tonight. We'll have a good night, but no drinking till then. Let's keep it together. Lads like, oh, Jan, like sap into each other as we do. And then we get on the ferry, sit down, lads are just in like circles, just chatting. We look over, Coach is like cracking through like a 12-pack of. We're all like, hang on a second. There's like one by one, we're just up to the bar, like getting beers. Next thing you know, we're all like 6 pints deep. Get off the ferry like steaming. What do we do? Went straight to Dunkirk Beach, having like, I think you were ringing the garage about getting your car MOT'd or something grown up, and then we Toops had laid out 300 vodka jelly shots.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, it was like we're here to pay our respects, but yet there was just like a buffet of booze laid out on the beach, and we were there just getting plastered.
Oh, and then what did we do? Was that was the same night we rolled into Eep, wasn't it? It was a big ceremony.
Yes, we rolled into Eep, and every night they have this ceremony to remember those that have fallen, and it's every single night, I'm pretty sure, for about a minute. Bearing in mind, at this point, we've been drinking probably from about 10 in the morning to probably 12 at night at this point. And we're all at this really, like, official ceremony, something that, you know, a lot of people care about. And obviously, we were there to pay our respects. So we're all lined up against the wall. I've got like Ed Taylor opposite me, Sheppy there, you're there, Budgie's here, and Michael Le Bourgeois, our captain, and Paul Tupai have been asked to take a wreath,
Yeah.
flowers. How'd you say? Yeah, grammar. Take a lot of flowers and walk it in the minute silence across this hall, and there's hundreds of people watching to lay it down in front of the board of names. And as they're walking past us, Tails just decides to fart at the key moment, right? And it was like your perfect fart. It was like a trumpet fart. It was absolutely brilliant. But obviously, we're in the middle of this minute silence, and I've honestly never had to fight laughter so hard in my whole entire life. And that was the memory of that trip that sticks out the most.
I felt like I was having an asthma attack because you know when you're like getting told, you're like,
yeah.
I think even Mike was laughing, to be fair. And then the trumpets playing the last place, and I think we just lost it.
Yeah. Without sounding disrespectful to anyone that's going to listen, it was just one of their moments. Yeah. So the time at Bedford, you were there for, was it 5 seasons before the move?
Yeah, 5
and
years.
Obviously, so COVID happened in between that, and I guess you could argue that was quite a big turning point, yes, in your career almost. If you want to explain how that whole situation kind of came around and where your head was at.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, COVID hit sort of out of nowhere. We travelled up to Newcastle. We were playing them away, and it was like that week where everyone was like, "Oh, I think we're," like the rumours of lockdown started, and people were like, "What the hell's lockdown?" We were on a bus, like 35 of us, on a jolly up to Newcastle. A few lads had a cough, and we were like, "Is this play on?" I think a few games got cancelled, blah blah blah. Went up there. That's actually another great story. Went up there, played in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people. Like we got pumped 44-0. At the end, the lads up there wouldn't shake our hands because of COVID. I was like, we've literally just played a game for 8 minutes, so like started doing like elbows. And then they weren't allowed out, but we were like, well, we're going out. So we all went out. Like some of our parents came out and everything. We're in the bar. Like I've only been up to Newcastle a couple of times, but I've never seen it that busy. It turned into basically our end of season. I think we got in like God knows what time. Got the coach back again. Everyone like coughing, sputtering. Then on the Tuesday we went into lockdown, or Wednesday. So it was literally like unofficial end of season, class, everyone all right, sweet, crack on. And then Obviously, as you know, the champ didn't start for best part of a year, probably, was it in the end?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So we just sort of, Bedford were like, we can't start without crowd. You're all on furlough uh, just till we hear more, basically. And at that point, we were going like 2 weeks at a time without news. So we had about maybe a couple months off, and like lads were doing their daily exercise and stuff. And I was like, I can't see the end of this. I'm getting bored already. So I spoke to Ashy, who's the groundsman at the club, who had a landscaping garden business. And I was like, mate, do you just need any help? Like, he worked the whole way through because he's outdoors. I was like, I'm gonna go insane. Like, if you need any help, let me know. About a week later, he's like, oh, I've got a big job starting. Fancy coming down? Went down. It was like 30 degrees. We were tops off, doing this whole garden. Did that for, I think, about a week probably. I didn't even know if he was going to pay me or anything. At the end of the week, paid me. I was like, "Cool, that was class." Like, good group of boys, enjoyed that, and then just sort of spitballed into. He was like, "Oh, we're busy. Everyone's got loads of work. Come down, like, just basically help us out 5 days a week type thing." So got stuck into that, and after about 6 months, we were still doing sort of optional training in the evening at Bedford because they were like, "Look, you guys go out and get work, do whatever you can. You're on furlough, but we can't top it up to the extra 20% or whatever it was." So to be fair to the lads, pretty much everyone had a job by then. So yeah, I was doing that 5 days a week, training. Sort of, we were just doing like touch rugby, com games in the evening. And I said to Ashley, because I was also going to have to pay like tax and stuff, I was like, I may as well just set up my own little thing here and just whatever happens, if it doesn't take off, it doesn't take off. And then he was sort of wanting to retire. So, I was fortunate that I was born in Bedford, parents still live there. I was captain at the time. So like business started to come in pretty easily because, word of mouth spread and stuff like that. And I think it was 4 or 5 of the lads, the other rugby lads, that were sort of like looking around for work. I was like, "Oh, come crack on with us. Like, it's a bit gritty. Your lower back will hurt, but we'll have a laugh doing it." So yeah, did that for best part of 3 years really. Like, even when we went back, we had a big meeting with Bedford, and I think they wanted to go like a full-time, part-time, weird little hybrid. So we sort of got together as players, and we were like, "Look, everyone's got jobs, like proper careers they want to get into. We'd all probably have to leave Bedford if they stick with this schedule, because we just can't." You know what it was like. They've tried to offer pay cuts because of COVID, and now lads are suddenly like, "Well, I can pretty much double my salary by doing them together. So why wouldn't I just get to Nat One and do that where they've got that model sort of nailed down?" So yeah, a bit of back and forth. And to be fair to the club, they were like, "Actually, we get you. Like, we understand." Because my argument to them was, you can pay lads a bit less, but they'll be earning more. So ultimately, they're happier, and they were working towards life after rugby anyway. So you're going to have like a great environment where everyone's happy, really. Um, and yeah, Mike, to be fair, came round to it and was class, and I'm pretty sure they're still doing the exact same sort of model now. So yeah, I was like fully headfirst into that until old Paul Larkin rang from Bristol, let me know that Charles was injured and to sort of stay ready. And then Pat rang, and I fought it for a good couple of weeks, to be fair, because I'd sort of got to the point where I'd made peace with sort of not going back to the Prem. I was not even thinking about it. I was loving the balance of playing rugby with my mates to like a serious level, but not serious enough that you can't just have a beer and enjoy it, and also working. So yeah, sort of, I say unfortunately, I guess ultimately I probably would have regretted if I hadn't come back to this environment and at least given it one more shot. Um, so yeah, for the moment, sort of had to put the business on the back burner because obviously it was pretty full on here. We just don't have the time to do sort of labouring and things like that. But yeah, that few years has given me a massive sort of focus and awareness of exactly what I want to get stuck into after rugby, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What would you? How hard did you have to fight it to not say that you'll go to Bristol? You know what I mean? What was the main reasoning behind that? Obviously, the work and having a balance was great. But like you said, was it just purely the fact you'd made peace with not going back to the Premiership? Was it really hard to fight? If you understand what I'm trying to say, or was it quite an
Yeah.
easy decision?
No, I think you'd know as well as anyone. Sort of, I know you only did a year. Well, you were there before, but you only did a year in Bedford. But it's a tough place to leave, especially when you're playing and enjoying it and sort of happy with where. I think if it had just been rugby and I hadn't had work, if it had just been we hadn't had COVID, I was still at Bedford. We were still like sort of full time, and then Bristol came along. I think it would have been an easier decision to be like, okay, yeah, I'm still fully rugby. That's an unbelievable opportunity. Um, I just think for me in that 3 years, I very much was like on my way on the transition to be like, I could I could do another couple of years at Bedford, and then I could very comfortably sort of easily transition straight into sort of full work. And so I guess in my head it was like if I go to Bristol and I can't do it on the side, am I having a good 2 years or whatever here, but am I setting myself back 2 years in terms of my learning and stuff for life after rugby? And I've never wanted to sort of finish and then you have a massive drop off. Well, not very big for me, lol. Of like earnings, and then like build yourself up again. I think where we were at Bedford was like a very much a natural, nice movement of, we can play until the body has had enough or whatever, a move straight away. And I think ultimately, if it hadn't been for sort of Kizzy being down here and we wanting to move back down here, I don't think I would have signed for another Prem club in a different location. Not that I had an offer, but you know what I'm saying? Sort of fitted with our grand plan, if you like.
What was your emotion like first day at Bristol? How did it feel? Did that environment feel familiar in terms of being at a Premiership club, or did you feel under pressure, or were you pretty comfortable in your own skin?
It was definitely a lot different coming in as like a 28-year-old as opposed to joining Bath when you're sort of 18, 19. I knew a lot of the lads I'm sort of playing against or school, all that side of, rugby's a small world, a lot of people. So straight sort of day one, lads are really welcoming. And, if sort of 10, 15 blokes, it makes it way easier sort of straight off the bat. I think I was lucky because when I first went, it was only on a month loan. So I kind of went in with the mentality of like, well, fuck it, if you like, it doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
I only do a month here and I've played Prem in Europe, then sweet, that's me happy. I could retire. Cool, like had a great time, thank you. Um, so yeah, doing those were month. So it was 3 months in total, which then obviously made the first day of like officially signing for pre-season made it like 50 times easier because I think I'd obviously I'd already played, I'd met everyone. It almost felt like going into a year two of an environment, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I was probably slightly nervous, but ultimately, as soon as you're in, I think you're just a bit more sure of like yourself, and like you're not that I'm, if a big dog signs, they walk in and everyone respects him straight away. It's not like that, but it's more just I had some good relationships anyway, and I guess I probably felt comfortable there a lot quicker than I did at Bath, which was nice to be fair.
Talk me through the first game for Bristol. How was that? The first game on loan. How was that?
That was it was Quins. So I played had like an A-League game against the Navy the week before, and I played the first half of that because Pat was like, "We want to get you up to speed, like the shape and all that sort of stuff." And then the week after, they named the team. They named the team on Monday, so you have quite a lot of time to get ready for the weekend. So yeah, named on the Monday that I was starting against Quins at home. So that was actually gonna be my Prem debut because I never played Prem for Bath, just played Europe and LV.
How was that emotion for you?
It was weird, mate. I'll be honest. I sort of not like a sound cringe, like a pinch me moment, but it was like this is actually mental. Like I'm 28. Obviously, you want it when you're 18, but I was like, it's taken 10 years really of
Mm.
grinding out in the champ, all those stories and stuff. And then we did a kicking session at the stadium the day before. And I remember the change rooms, JP, the kitman, had already set up the whole change rooms. And I just had lane 15 and it all, like the locker all set up. I think I just took a photo and put it on the family WhatsApp group. And I was just like, just feels like weird as cheese, basically, but pretty cool. Like fair play to you. And I think that's why, in a way, I wasn't that nervous for that game, because I was like, you've waited so long to do it. There's about 20,000 people. If you're shit, you're shit. But you may as well just enjoy it, because, like I said before, I was only here for a month, so I was like, it's been your dream. Just go and have a laugh.
Do you think that mindset, Rich, helped you step into Charles's, I guess, void there while he was out? Like if you were a youngster going into that same situation, and you know, you get Charles Pearce out in playing that position, you've been like, oh fuck. Do you think that mindset now that you're older and you're like, what have I got to lose? Kind of was like, all right, well, sweet, this is mine.
Yeah, 100%. I think probably if I was younger, I would have been like, I've got to try and do what he does type thing. And now I'm like, I could train for 10 years. I wouldn't have a left foot step like him. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, you know, Pat was real good, to be fair. He was like, look, you've played for 10, 12 years. You're an experienced fullback. You know what you're doing. Just go out and do it. And I think for me, it was so much info that week of like moves and everything. I didn't even have time to really think about, I've got to try and emulate Charles, or, you know, try and fill that void. I think I was just like, I'm going to go and do what I've been doing for Bedford and try and enjoy it. I'm probably going to make mistakes, so I don't know all the calls, but let's just get stuck in. And to be honest, 10 minutes in, my lungs were on absolute fire, so I wasn't really thinking about much else other than just trying to breathe. But yeah, I think that definitely helped being older.
What was the difference you found straight away in terms of physically from Goldington Road to being out on the pitch with a bunch of worldies?
I think, like, actual tackling stuff, I was almost surprised that it didn't feel that much different. For me, it was just sort of the pace of the game, like how quickly, if you kick the ball out, how quickly the line out's then going, or, you know, they maybe waste a little less time resetting scrums or that sort of thing. I think the ball in play, I guess against Quins, it's always a bit mental, but I think it was like 40 minutes or like 36. It was like right up there. So yeah, it's probably just how quickly or how much ball in play there is. So normally you'd have like a minute and a half to jog back and get ready for a line out, whereas they were like in, towel, hooker, cool, like whatever the phase call is, in, you're away. So you're like, right, we go again. Yeah, I actually remember coming off the pitch and just being like, not disappointed is a really bad word, but just like, oh, it wasn't actually, I didn't feel out of my depth, like I could do this type thing. You know, I think you sometimes think with all the champ chat and funding and all that sort of stuff, you're like, oh, it's so far away. And then you actually chuck like one person in around, like you said, all those worldies, and you're like, oh, actually, like we could do this here. You know, and it's probably the same with, again, we joke about the champ, but there's probably lads in that team that you put in a champ team and you wouldn't look at them and be like, oh my God, they're regular Prem players. I think it just sort of, it balances out, doesn't it, I guess?
Could they do it at Nottingham on a cold Tuesday night?
It's not for everyone, mate.
It's not for everyone. A big moment for me, which obviously I really enjoyed seeing, was when Bristol played at Tottenham Stadium and you started that game. And obviously that was one of those moments where it really hit you. You know, like what a change of scenery from the grounds that we played at in the Champ for years to playing at Tottenham Stadium, starting against the best team in Europe, arguably.
Yeah, I think that was the one where it almost got me like slightly emotional. So we again named the team early. Perhaps called me in and was like, "You're starting. Do you know why?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm going to be honest." You know? And he still explained it. I was like, "All right, cool." But yeah, that was. I mean, I don't know if you've always been to that stadium, but it's absolutely clean off. And it was, I think it was like 55,000. We ran out first, obviously. There was like flames everywhere. I was looking around. There was a woman playing violin on the roof. And then Sarries walked out to like an absolute wall of noise. And I was sort of just stood in the middle and had like sort of 20 seconds to myself and was just like this is clean off. Like, for starters, the pitch is flat, which is pretty cool. And then, just I was like, yeah, look at you. You've made it. It was cool. Very cool.
You picked up an injury. Am I right in saying the start of the season, or was it the end of last season?
It was the last month of last season, yeah.
And you were obviously expected to be on loan for a certain amount of time. That obviously overran, and then you didn't make your 100th game for Bedford. Did the injury kind of fuck with your headspace a little bit, because you'd gone on loan somewhere, you'd played, then you were aiming to come back and you picked up an injury, and it's all just a bit muddled again, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I was lucky that I'd signed probably the week before that happened. So I knew I was leaving Bedford. I knew I was still at Bristol. So then Bristol scanned that next day. Look, we know you're not technically on loan this month, but we've spoken to Bedford. We're going to rehab you here. So I was like, okay, that side of things I'm happy with. That will take care of itself. And then I guess it sort of made leaving Bedford feel a bit weird, because I never got to play for them again. Like you said, my whole sort of plan was, I'll go do a month or two at Bristol. Whatever happens, happens. If something comes of it, at least I'll come back, because because Bristol were out of the Europe and Prem. So I was like, sweet, I'm going to get at least a month to come back to Bedford. I think there's 5 games left or whatever. I'll play those and get the 100 and leave, on a high, so to speak. So yeah, it made that time really weird, because I ended up not going back to Bedford for 3 months. And then when I did go back, it was for a team photo, and I was sort of hobbling in and seeing all the lads again. And then I went back to watch the last game of the season. I think they played Pirates at home, but I was up on the balcony with our mate John Salmon, about 5 espresso martinis deep, having an unbelievable day. But you never had that moment of, oh shit, like this is the last time I'm doing this. This is the last time I'm playing for Bedford. So I never had that emotional. I feel like I probably would have got slightly emotional had I been playing. But yeah, that was disappointing. And now I've got a shirt hanging up that says, the Bedford shirt that says 97 games, which is a hanging number. I'm like, cheers, that's worked out well.
So you say when you got that injury, you were well aware that you signed on not to be on loan anymore. You signed on to have a contract.
Yeah, so we'd been talking after the first month, because I think I played 2 or 3 games in that first month, and it'd gone really well, to be fair. So we were talking, and then the week before the Sale game, I'd signed it, and then it happened. So obviously I was livid, because there was still a couple of Bristol games left, but I was more worried about Bedford at that point. As soon as I knew I'd signed and I'd spoken to Mike, I was like, I want to get back, finish on a high, enjoy this year, end the season social, blah 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 blah, and then look forward to Bristol. I almost want to park that. That's been fun, but that's now starts in June, so let's enjoy Bedford. So yeah, couldn't drive, blah blah blah, all the mental stuff that comes with being injured and having to get lifts everywhere and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was nice, like I said, because I'd signed and it was sorted. I think if I hadn't signed and done it, I'd have been like, they might not sign me now. I've got to go back to Bedford, miss the end of the season, and hopefully they would have signed me for the year after. I'd sort of had conversations with them. That was, in a good spot. But yeah, I mean, I was lucky. They looked after me really well, got me back, and I didn't have the panic of what now. And luckily, it was only a few months injury, not like a horrible sort of year one. I think if it'd been like an ACL or something, touch with that, they probably would have been like, "Nah, you're right." But yeah, the only shame for me was just, like I said, missing out on the last few games, having to stare at this number for forevermore.
And you mentioned it was a lower body injury, or I gather it was a broken foot. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was my 3rd metatarsal in the foot broke. Yeah.
And did you find, you're obviously quite a fast, elusive player? Did you find that that rehabilitation process frustrating because of that factor?
Yeah, massively. I think, like, again, you boys will both know, but for me, it was more of it was just aching for ages, and it just didn't feel right. And like the sort of, because it's just behind the toes, like the bend when you're on your toes trying to push off. I think everyone goes through it, but you had the moment where you're like, oh, is this ever going to feel like proper again, like it should feel? And it was taking a little bit longer, and we had it scanned again after however many weeks, and it was still fractured, and they were like, oh no, it's always going to look like that, but it's stronger now. And then, and it was just trying to get my head around sort of almost trusting that process. And I think, yeah, it was my kicking foot as well, so I couldn't even do like any kicking, or I was just doing like seated skills and things like that. And then you gradually get back into your Ultra G running. It was like 20% of your body weight, all that, just to try and get that movement going back. Did quite a lot in the pool. And I've had it before with hammies, and, Eddie, you'll be the same. Like, you just sometimes get that week or that session where it just sort of clicks, and you finish the session, you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that just then. And then from then on, you're really quickly like back into it, and your confidence comes back, and you just forget that you ever had that, don't you? I think your body's good at just going, you just part that pain feeling and you move on.
How conscious were you of contact situations from there on with your foot?
Yeah, I was
big semi stepping on your foot.
Yeah, I've had it a few times in training, the similar thing, and it swells up and stuff. And you're like, no, not again, not again. But I think that one felt so weird. I'd know, but yeah, definitely for a few months after, anything that sort of landed on my foot, you get like the sort of hot sweats. Is it the same thing? But no, I've been lucky so far. It's held out.
Did you find obviously championship physios, medical staff, it is what it is. Sometimes it's limited, sometimes it's great. Did you find that the rehab ran a lot more smoothly being at the facility and having the access to stuff that you wouldn't have at Bedford, at Bristol? Did it give you a bit more peace of mind?
Yeah, massively. Obviously, like you said, the champ guys, they're just making do with what they have. Like sometimes they might not have a budget for a scan, or they don't have a budget for an anti-gravity treadmill, or whatever. Even at Bedford, we didn't have a game ready. It's just like something is so small like that. And obviously, in sort of Bristol, we have a lot of physios. I don't know, 7 or 8. So you're sort of assigned. Physio gets like their sort of pool of players. But yeah, we're real lucky as well, because obviously the owner owns Bristol City, and their training ground's literally 200 meters down the road. I went over there for a bit of my rehab because they had the things like the oxygen chamber, the treadmill. They had like a sort of mini running track thing outside. So yeah, and I guess you're in 5 days a week, whereas at Bedford or other champ clubs, we were in like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday evenings for a couple of hours. And physios, we had 2 physios, and they had all these boys to see. A lot of your rehab was on your own, or they might give you a session, then you've got to go do it on your own while the lads are training. Whereas, I was pretty much supervised throughout the whole thing. They're measuring like force through force plates, or your jumps, or your speed with your 1080 machines that measure your speed and all your speed gates and stuff like that. So they had loads of data to like back up where I was at. But it's just a money thing, isn't it? Like that. Ultimately, they've got citizens.
I think there's a choice you make in the championship when you do get injured. And it's quite an easy thing to say, but it's either you treat yourself as a professional and you buy in, or you will just be fucked for the rest of the season. I remember, I won't say what club, but like they wouldn't get me a scan. And they were like, no, it's a 5-week job. And I was like, how do you know? And they had the old X-ray vision on like this. Yeah, it's a 5-week job. They were like, beep, 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 5 weeks. And I was like, how do you know? They were like, I've seen it before. I was like, right, here we go. So I said to them, I'll go. I had private medical care through my dad. I was like, well, I'll go and get a scan. and they came after me for going to get a scan. They were like, "You can't go and get a scan." They were like, "We've told you it's 5 weeks," and I'm like, "You haven't got me a scan, and you're having a go at me for getting a scan." So there's situations like that where even you taking your own professional career into your own hands, literally, can sometimes, well, it has to be the case, effectively. But you're right; they have to deal with what they've got. It's just the way it is, and I think it's the way it always has been.
Yeah, I think. Do you remember? Yeah, like you said, there's guys that have gone either way, isn't there? Like we both play with guys who have put on weight. One of them broke their leg, put on 20 kilos or whatever it was on like a clean break of a leg, and it's like I don't even know if he's ever been the same since. But it's an option between just chilling out and 2 for Tuesdays at Domino's, or like you said, being proactive and seeing specialists or doing stuff off your own back. But again, it's like how much of your own money are you willing to push into your career when you're not earning much in the champ anyway? It's like a catch-22, isn't it?
I mean, you have seen plenty of players that just fade away from rugby, not even like retire, but they pick up an injury that can't be treated regularly, don't have the right meds, don't have a scan, and they do just fade away. And it's that injury they never came back from, which is a shame. But
It's like a racehorse, isn't it? At some champ clubs.
Oh. Yeah, yeah. Well, have you been injured for longer than 12 weeks? Yes. Okay. Well, you're gone. See you later. Moving forward to the point we're at now, obviously Bristol have had quite a tough season, but for you, it's almost the first full season of I guess you could say, your breakthrough year, if you like, at that level anyway. Has it been quite hard to manage your own expectations with what's been going on with the team in terms of how they've been performing?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like, obviously, we're not in a good position at the moment. We're bottom of the league. It's not great. And the stuff that comes with that, everyone's a bit more on edge. It's a bit more sort of high stress. We're obviously, as everyone is, striving to be better, and I think we're not far off. But from a personal point of view, for me, like you said, it was sort of just about, right, I just want to play as much as I can this year. I want to get Prem caps under my belt. I want to get experience. And I guess when I signed, I knew that in Charles, you got one of the best fullbacks in the world. I was like, I'm not signing, obviously, as a first choice. I'm going to be sort of understudied to that. So it's hard though, isn't it? Because like for me, I played the first 5 games of the season, and then you sort of whether you like it or not, your mentality quickly changes to, well, I want to be doing that every week. And then when you're not playing for a month because Charles is like absolutely ripping up, you've got to I've had to try and check myself and be like, actually, like, you've played, I don't know, is it maybe like 10 games this year? Realistically, what were you actually hoping for? Like, try and just check yourself again. But it's hard because you come off the back of someone like Bedford where you play like 20, 30 games that year. And, it's quite a nice feeling that your body's dust at the end. You look back over the year and you're like, oh, I did all that. So I've just kind of had to, I guess, I feel like in a way it's been frustrating because this year I've know so much more of the calls and the detail, of which we have a lot. I think it's easy to overthink all that. So last year I was probably playing a bit more on instinct on the loan side of things. Like we said, we're sort of coming in and not feeling the pressure and just getting stuck in. This year, I've almost at times been like, you've given up the landscape and you've given up the fun at Bedford. This has to work. Like this can't be 2 years of sort of, not playing and just wasting time. So I've had quite a few good chats with we've got a psychologist that is there a couple of times a week, just about trying to be realistic about it and enjoy the games you are playing. And I guess in my head, I'm trying to get to a stage where I take on the information that the team needs, but I'm also disregarding stuff that gets said in meetings that maybe it's not relevant to me. So I'm sort of going out to play and trying to get back to that mindset of, I call it fuck it. That's what I say before I go out. it's like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? You know, you get sacked off, or you know, whatever. You have a shit game. So what? Like, you've done this. You played for him now. You've done that. Like, you're fine. You know. So I guess, yeah. Ultimately, it's like sometimes you sit back and watch Charles play, and you go, "Fuck, he's so good." Like, it's actually just a joy to watch. And then other times you're coming in not trying to put too much pressure on yourself, because you guys will know what it's like if you don't play for 2 months. That next game, you're like, this has got to be the one. I've got to be so good. I've got to be on it. But then your match fitness is way down, or you're forcing stuff, and things actually sometimes go worse. So I guess it's trying to not get too high when you're picked and you're playing and all that sort of stuff, and then not get too low when you're not playing and you're like, "Oh, this is frustrating," and you know, this is the feeling I didn't want to get. So I'm trying to stay like just quite neutral through it all, and just take it as it comes, really.
What does the rest of your contract look like for you? What's the ambition? What's the aim? You know, is it to see out the 2 years? Is it to keep going and enjoy it for what it is as long as you can? Is it maybe something abroad, or are you just literally trying to stay in the present as much as possible?
Yeah, I think for me, like I sort of said, it's about making sure this isn't a waste, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm here. I don't just want to get through the 2 years and be like, okay, that was class, I did it. But like, I'm here. I want to compete, and I want to play like everyone does. I want to play every week, whether that happens or not. Okay, but that's what I'm striving for. And you know, obviously, as a team, we've got ambitions to be a lot higher up than we are, and everyone is working towards that. But yeah, just for me, it's like, how can I compete and put myself in a position where I'm in the mix every week? You know, might not be starting, but I'm in that conversation of that start, that 23, if you like. So yeah, I sort of said when I did sign, it's like, you're here, you're going to enjoy it, but also you can't just sort of chill your way through this and just say you've done it. Like, if you're doing it, you do it properly, and let's get stuck into it. Otherwise, there's no point, and I should have just stayed at Bedford. You know what I mean? So yeah, I guess I don't really have any set aspirations in terms of like, oh, I want to play international, or I want to go abroad, I want to do this. I just take it as it comes, stay in the present, but also not just chilling my way through it, actually like making the best of whatever this 2 years is. And if nothing comes after that, so be it. You know, I've given my all, and then I'd know I had no regrets from there, really.
How's the body feeling at this stage? You know, what are you, 28, 29?
29 now, yeah.
You know,
It's all right, to be fair. I still feel, I know, how am I suddenly 29? I feel all right, to be fair. I think, again, another thing, like we talk about your medical stuff, obviously there's so much nutrition here. Recovery, you know, we've got like ice baths, saunas, the food chefs here are unbelievable. You get fed really well. You know, all your training, sort of your GPS, time on feet, all that sort of stuff. So they do look after you well. So I've had a few little niggles and stuff, but I'm not sort of sat around feeling like, cool, I've only got a year left. Body's like hanging on. Still feel like a spring chicken, mate.
Well, that's the main thing.
As long as you feel as good as you did on that, as long as you feel as good as you did on that Bruges trip, mate, you'll be all right.
Mate, when times are tough, I just have to look through photos on my phone of that trip in triple denim, and I'm like, God, we've done well.
Triple denim. How's triple denim work?
It was like top, trousers. If you got shoes, get them on. If not, hat.
I'm just loads of these like hanging part-time rugby players walking through the streets of Bruges with crates of beer on their head. Unbelievable.
No, I've probably got a photo of you. I don't know if it would show up on Zoom.
No, go on, you may as well.
If you talk amongst yourselves, I could definitely find you something. I got a great one of you DJing in a nightclub. That's cool.
Yeah, brilliant.
I think I've got. Oh, here we go. I don't know how well you're about to see this. Can you see how fake sad you are?
What on the left? Yeah, Benny, I was off the back of an ACL rehab where I managed to gain 18 kilos from November to May, and I gained 18 clicks. And
Look at the state of him here, mate. When he just got his straight out.
You look like a little Oompa Loompa, mate.
Honestly, man. Looking back
Big
at
old
that,
boy.
I was absolutely hanging. Played some good stuff that year, though, so I can take it. I managed the weight quite well. But yeah, I put on 18 kilos, mate, in one season. Or November to May it was. And
He used to leave training and we had a shop round the corner. He'd get in his little Golf, he'd go straight to the shop and he'd buy every flavour of grenade bar going. Birthday grenade, all sorts. He'd be going home, he'd have about 4 grenade bars and just sit on the sofa.
and the thing is, I had no real concept of calories. So I was like, protein bar, protein. Yeah. I need protein. I'll eat 4 of them. And
then he'd text you about 6 p.m. going, do you fancy waggers?
No, good stuff. Mate, I'm happy to leave it there. You've been a great guest, so very much appreciate you coming on. I hope you enjoyed yourself and had a laugh.
Thanks for having me, lads. It's been always good to reminisce about those sorts of things.